What's up, guys? This is Taking the Field with Stevie Mac, episode 27 of the podcast. I'm Steven MacDonald, and with me today on Skype is Phil Rothermich and Coach Schroeck. We just got done a few minutes ago with our fantasy PLL draft, and we're going to jump right into it now and kind of recap everything that went into it with you guys. And let's kind of just get your initial thoughts on what went down in our draft. It took us about an hour and a half or so to get through it. It was a 10-round ordeal for our guys. So, Phil, we can start with you.
Well, first, thanks so much for having me on the podcast, man. It's always a pleasure to be here. Always a lot of fun.
Yep, love having you.
But I will say, as far as the draft went, it was awesome, man. It was so cool. As you're drafting players, you can click and see all their stats. You can search for certain players you're looking for. You can search for positions and teams, whatever you want. But it also shows you the next best available. Yeah. So if you're really unsure, you don't know what to do, that is awesome. It's really nice. It's nice to have a little bit of something to rely on. So, but all in all, good experience. There's a few tweaks I might suggest, but at the same time, this is the first year for everyone. Pro Lacrosse Talk doing it. It's the first year for the guys who made it up. It's the first year for us doing it. Everyone's a guinea pig right now with this. So we're all learning, and I'm sure as it goes forward, there'll be more tuning.
Yeah, absolutely. And real quick, just to your point, you mentioned kind of like the overall process of it and everything. I thought that, and one of the guys mentioned in our group chat just a minute ago, I thought the process overall went really smooth. And I think I said it to you guys during our draft when we were just kind of talking back and forth on here. But for me, it kind of seemed like how you would normally see with like NFL fantasy, but it was kind of just more of a simplified, kind of dumbed down version of that.
Yeah, a little bit simplified, but almost in a good way, you know?
Yeah.
It was simplified so it's easy for everyone to understand, easy for people to draft, rather than trying to be kind of cute with it. And then all of a sudden you're wondering how to make your picks and, oh, who have I picked it or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Schroeck, what do you got?
First of all, Steve, thanks for having me on the podcast here. Overall, yeah. I thought it was a great experience as well. I mean, we've been looking forward to live sports for a while. This is definitely hitting the button that I've been waiting for a while, especially getting Pro Lacrosse back on the television screen.
Yep.
Overall, I love the experience. Obviously, there are some kinks that still need to be worked out, but obviously with this being the kind of the benchmark for fantasy lacrosse, it was a good start.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know personally I had a lot of fun. Our group chat was just blowing up during the draft, guys talking about their picks and things like that. I know Jordan Johnson, again, couldn't be on with us for this episode, but he said that he'll kind of look over his roster now that we're finished up with our draft. He said he'll send in his thoughts as well, and maybe if he gets those in the next few minutes, we can read off some of those as well, kind of get his input as much as possible, because obviously we love having him on here as well. And as I mentioned on past episodes, we definitely got to try and get him back on in a future episode if we can.
Absolutely.
So then with this, now that the draft is over, I guess for you guys specifically, since you're here, what's kind of like your next step that you guys are going to take in assembling your rosters, since we're still about 2 weeks out from the championship series starting?
I think for me it's tough because I'm comfortable with everyone I have. I feel great. But we're going to have to wait and see how things progress, right? Deemer Class got injured out of the middle of nowhere. Nobody saw that coming, and that's a guy that would have been picked up early and easily. So it's going to be interesting to see how, as these players get closer and closer to the season, if someone tests positive for COVID, if someone gets injured, how that's going to affect your team that you've already drafted, because now you're dropping someone, trying to get someone from the waiver wire. You're sure not going to be able to trade someone who's injured. So it's going to be really interesting to see how things go.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm very curious as well as to how this is going to go. I'm comfortable with my team other than the fact I've drafted 4 attackmen, thinking someone got to find out if that's going to happen at all. But that'll work in my favor. Well, overall, I'm very comfortable with the team. Just a matter of picking who I think is going to do the best overall.
Yeah, and I think some of the guys mentioned that fluidity of the draft and kind of how it just kind of seamlessly transition, throughout. And I think that for the most part, a lot of these guys are comfortable with the picks that they made and kind of how their teams all came together. So I feel like overall it was just a very positive first experience with this fantasy lacrosse deal. And I think that it really kind of sets the table for moving forward into 2021 because as I mentioned in our group chat the other day, it kind of struck me that this season is only 2 weeks long. So we're kind of just getting a feel for what it's like. But then you look at something like next year when it's presumably going to be a full season again, like it was in 2019. Then you get a full 10-week kind of normal setup for how everything's going to go down. And I think that's just going to make it 10 times more fun.
That's the dream, to have a 10-week fantasy lacrosse season.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to it. That's for sure.
It's going to be a blast. I feel like, maybe some people expect me to have some sort of secret player or something. I don't know that that's the case. And as far as I've ever done fantasy before, like I told you guys, anytime I've ever done fantasy in my whole life, I set my whole team, and I'm like, nobody will ever beat my team in 1,000 years. And then, like, 3 games in, I'm like, I don't know if I've ever even watched this sport before. How did I pick this? So we'll see.
Yeah, it seems like whenever anybody plays fantasy sports of any kind, really, they always think that they're that master strategist until you start to actually put your starting lineups together and play the games, and then you realize maybe not so much. Maybe there's a reason that the real GMs get paid to do what they do, and I just sit here and watch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, it definitely was overall, I think, a very good first experience, at least for me. I know the other guys in our group have already mentioned how much fun they had with it, and I think it was nice that it didn't take up a whole lot of our time either, so it was kind of like we got in, we got it done, and now we can just move on and start to look ahead at the championship series itself. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of really what I wanted to touch on with this, and I'll just let you guys kind of wrap up with your finishing thoughts on all of it.
I would just say, I like to kind of repeat myself a little bit. This is a wonderful thing. I think it's so cool they did this. Fans of lacrosse have been waiting for something like this.
Yeah.
Last year, Pro Lacrosse Talk did kind of like a pick'em, which was one step there. We are also excited that we had that. And now to have this is even more incredible. And I think as we go forward, each and every year, we're going to see this thing get tuned a little bit more. And before you know it, this is going to be just, I mean, it's going to be the best. I feel like it already is, but it's going to get better as we go.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is the benchmark. We can only go up from here.
That's right.
I'm just impressed to see, looking at my paperwork over here, looking at like who was picked. I did not expect we would have like 4 Fogos taken in the first round. I thought it would be all attack midfield. No, I'm wrong completely. But overall, it was a great experience. I wish I could do more of it, but let's focus now, and hopefully we have this for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And just real quick before we sign off here, I just want to mention, you guys mentioned the 4 Fogos in the first round. One of mine was one of those 4. And it's funny because I had Trevor Baptiste and Joe Nardella as my top 2 there. Phil, you took Baptiste, and then a few picks later, it might have been 1 or 2 picks later, we had to auto pick for one of our players in our league for this draft, and of course he got Joe Nardella, so then I had to start kind of looking down my list a little bit, so that kind of came back and bit me a little bit, but I feel like I got a pretty solid option in Connor Farrell there, so I'm pretty happy about the way that my draft went, outside of the one airheaded mistake that I made with Brian Karalunas, but I already corrected that one after our draft ended. But yeah, I mean, that'll pretty much do it for this one. Make sure to check out the podcast on YouTube, SoundCloud, and Podchaser by searching Taking the Field with Stevie Mac, And I'll see you guys later.